Hello, my name is Carrie Brown and I am with the Central Mississippi Regional Library System. Today I'm going to be reading to you chapters 5 and 6 of A to Z Mysteries, The Goose's Gold. Written by Ron Roy, illustrated by John Stephen Gurney, published by Random House, New York. Chapter 5. Graham Hathaway's living room was crowded with people. Spike and Chip sat at a small table with the box in front of them. Dink, Josh, and Ruth Rose perched on the stairs. "Thank you all for coming," Graham told everyone. Then she smiled at Spike. He stood up. "Thanks for inviting us," Spike said. "Chip and I have been diving for a few years now. A couple weeks ago, we found a sunken ship." Chip opened the box. Spike reached in and pulled out a gold cross about 8 inches tall. The gold shone warmly in the sunny room. Someone said, "Oh my goodness!" Spike gently laid the cross on the table. Next, he brought out a shiny hunk of silver about the size of a big bar of soap. Then he spread a handful of gold coins on the table. "There's a lot more down there," he continued. "We found chains, silver goblets, even jewelry." Graham's friends got out of their seats and crowded around Spike and Chip. "May we touch it?" one woman asked. Spike laughed. "Can't hurt it, ma'am. It's been on the bottom of the ocean for almost 400 years. Josh was standing up so he could see. Graham Hathaway's friends were passing around the gold and silver. Spike?" Josh said. "How did you get it so clean? Wouldn't it have barnacles and stuff all over it?" Spike grinned. "Good question," he said. "First we soak the pieces, then we rub them with regular old vinegar. You'd be surprised how easily it cleans up." Ruth Rose's hand shot up. "Can I ask a question?" Spike nodded. "Ask away." "It took Mel Fisher 20 years to find his sunken ship," said Ruth Rose. "How did you find yours so quickly?" Spike smiled. "I guess we were just lucky," he said. "And we had good maps," Chip added. Spike turned back to the group. "I hope you'll all consider investing with us," he said. "Once we can buy some more equipment, we'll start bringing up some serious treasure." Ruth Rose's grandmother stood up. "Why don't we have refreshments now?" she said. Everyone began talking and filling small plates with cookies. Ruth Rose went into the kitchen for the lemonade. Dink and Josh stayed on the stairs near the table of goodies. Spike and Chip stepped over to the refreshment table. Dink watched Spike take a few cookies. "These cookies are loaded with chocolate chips," Spike whispered to his friend. Dink was about to say something to Spike, but he stopped. He knew he had heard those words before. Dink closed his eyes and tried to remember the voice he'd overheard in the airport. Dink was positive the man had said, "Those cookies are loaded." Dink was almost sure it had been the same voice. He looked down for a tattoo, but Spike's pants covered his ankles. The sandals looked the same, but a lot of people in Florida wore brown leather sandals. "What's the matter?" Ruth Rose asked Dink. "You look like you smelled something rotten." Dink stood up. "Come outside," he whispered. "It's important." Chapter 6. Josh and Ruth Rose followed Dink through the living room to the porch. They sat on the front steps. "What's going on?" Josh asked. "I wasn't through with those cookies." "Remember the guy I told you about at the airport yesterday?" Dink asked, "talking on the phone?" Ruth Rose grinned. "Yeah, the cook you thought was planning a robbery." Dink turned around and looked through the screen door. "I think it was Spike." Josh and Ruth Rose just stared at Dink. Finally, Josh said, "What are you talking about, Dinkus?" "I recognized his voice," Dink said. "The guy at the airport said the same thing, that some old cookies were loaded." Josh shook his head. "So? Don't you see?" Dink said. "Maybe he meant Graham Hathaway's friends are loaded. Loaded with money." Suddenly the door opened and Graham's friends began coming out. They all seemed excited about investing with Spike and Chip. Then Spike and Chip came out carrying the box of gold. Graham Hathaway followed them onto the porch. "Thanks for calling us a cab, Mrs. Hathaway," Spike said. "Do you really think your friends will help us out?" Graham Hathaway smiled. "I wouldn't be a bit surprised. I'm going to talk to my banker on Monday morning." A yellow cab pulled up and Spike and Chip climbed in with the box. They waved out the window as the cab sped away. "Wasn't that fun?" Ruth Rose's grandmother said. She stepped back into the house. There are plenty of goodies left if anyone is hungry, she called through the screen door. Thanks, Gram, Ruth Rose said. She's pretty excited, she added after her grandmother had gone inside. I would be too if I was going to get rich, Josh said. Dink stood up. Well, I don't think she's going to get rich, he said. I think she's going to get robbed. Robbed? Ruth Rose yelled. Yeah, Dink said. Spike and Chip could just take off with your grandmother's money. But what about all that gold they just showed us? Josh asked. Dink shook his head. I don't know about that, but I do know what I heard. You know what you thought you heard, Josh said. Besides, you don't know it was Spike. You never saw the guy on the phone. But I did see his feet, Dink said. He told Josh and Ruth Rose about the tattoo he'd seen on the man's ankle. It's a good thing I'm such an observant young man, Josh said. I know how we can settle this whole thing. How? Ruth Rose asked. By finding out if it really was Spike that Dink heard on the phone. Dink looked at him. And how do we do that, oh observant one? Josh grinned. Easy. We get Spike to show us his tattoo. Thank you. Be sure to tune in next week for chapters 7 and 8. Goodbye.